Morning, everybody. Welcome to the first meeting of the Public and Protective Services Committee. The voting members of this committee are myself, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Berg, and Mayor Clayton. And for our first order of business is we've got the GP Sport Connection, the Grande Prairie Regional Sport Connection coming and presenting. And I'm not sure who from your delegation is coming up, so if you'll just come up to the table and introduce yourselves, and you've been here before, so you know the routine. You get about 5 minutes, then we get to ask you any questions we might have. Thank you for being here today.
Good morning. Yeah, thank you for having us. My name is Karna Gurmscheid. I'm the Executive Director for the Grande Prairie Regional Sport Connection, and here with me today I have Julia Dutov, who's our Vice Chair for the organization. All right, so generally we do our funding report, and then we'd like to come in 6 months later and share our strategic plan, just to keep everybody up to date and aware of everything that's going on. But unfortunately, we haven't done our strategic plan yet, but I really appreciate this opportunity to be here because there's really a lot to talk about anyway. And today what I want to talk about is the Regional Sport Database. So for those of you that don't know, the Grande Prairie Regional Sport Connection has a sport database, and what that is a sport volunteer contacts for different sport in the organizations within the region. We use this for communication. We use this to help us communicate with the sport community. We use it, excuse me, we use it to help the community communicate with the sport committee, or the community to the sport community, and all sorts of different tools we use it for. Anyway, what we did this summer is we spent some time cleaning it up, but instead of just sending out the regular form for just what's your contact, what social media, we thought we'd ask more questions, more clarifying questions. So some of the questions that we asked in this questionnaire, we received information that I feel like you guys will be interested in getting. So one of the things was increased use of apps for communication registration.
Just while we're doing that, Councillor Plott, I just wanted to let you know, in standing committees, just raise your hand because I only see the queue, but the chair won't see the queue. So if you're in a committee meeting, just raise your hand to get recognized.
All right, no, that is perfect. Actually, it gave me some time to catch my breath. Awesome, and now we're back. So a lot of really great information came out of these questionnaires that we felt was very valuable to share with everybody here. So one is the increased use of apps. Apps are really important in sport because we know that sport is run by sport volunteers, so workload matters. Volunteer burnout is a real thing. When organizations use apps, they help with that decrease, right? But not most of them are actually using them still for registration, which is great with the workload, but they're not fully utilizing them for communication. Some of them are, but we still have a lot of work to do there. As far as reaching out to our sport community, 100% responded that they were still using Facebook as a form of communication. Second most popular social media was Instagram still. So we're still right to be reaching out there to connect. 95% of the programming is offered to, 95% of the sport organization offer both programming to both female and male athletes. Now, this doesn't reflect the participation numbers, as we know the female athletes' participation is much less than male, so we still have a lot of work to do, but that's really good that we are offering programming like that in the region. 79% said they could host a tournament. This matters for social and economic impact for our region. And we went further to ask what level of tournaments they'd be able to host. 98% feedback was regional, 58% provincial, 16% could host national events, and 10% reported that they felt capable to host international events. 56% of the organizations that responded have paid staff. So just anecdotally, I've been in this position since 2014. That is an increase. I do think that it's reflective of how our sport is run. Nowadays, sport has become more monetized, which is not always a bad thing, actually. But also, with the decrease in volunteers and coaches and things like that, there needs to be some sort of incentive to engage and retain those types of skilled volunteers. Of the organizations that responded, 64% identified as nonprofit organizations. And I say identified because I don't think a lot of our organizations understand what a nonprofit is. I think they just assume if they're not making any money, they're a nonprofit organization, but we all know that it's an actual business model, and some of them have not seen their bylaws for decades, as you probably realize and recognize. So that is good that they're registered, but we still have some work to do with that. Some of the challenges that came forward aren't going to be any surprise. Facilities, I lumped in information like not enough time, ill-suited facilities for the types of programming, and those were lumped in together for 38%. 29% mentioned the cost of operating as a challenge. 39% communicate the challenges with recruiting volunteers. So a lot of feedback right now, officials are really destitute for in a lot of our different sport organizations. Coaches are really, they're really not stepping forward like they used to. So we find that we have coaches kind of splitting themselves between different teams and things like that, which decreases the amount of play time for our participants as well. So it does impact our ability for quality service delivery in sport. Other notable mentions is finding new members. So something that's positive about our organizations post-COVID, we're seeing a lot of increase in a lot of our sport organizations' membership, but that seems to be offset by a percentage of organizations that are still trying to, rebuild those members. So promotions, they self-identify as being weak in the ability to kind of promote themselves and increase that membership. And boards are point of contention still within our organizations, so we need to still recognize that access to training in these areas are really valuable. So what do they need? They're saying they need facilities, promotions, helping with increased exposure, volunteers, that includes coaches, officials I include in there as well, and plus our sport managers out there. Funding, education. One of the biggest barriers, just through conversations of coaches stepping forward, is some of them don't really have the confidence and don't know kind of where to start. So there's some opportunity for growth in there. And advocacy, and when it comes from the sport organizations, the advocacy piece that their request is, please don't let them forget the service that we offer to our community, that we're doing this, and because we think it's really great for the people that we're offering our services to. So that is it for the sport database. And very quickly, I want to sneak in a win for us recently. This week, we just launched the sport registration listing. We received a call from Councillor Bressie in the summer, and actually it lined up perfectly with our marketing and communications coordinator hitting the pavement, doing all these interviews with the sport organizations. And we know that we don't have the capacity to follow all these organizations and understand when they open, when they close, but we do know that consistently, if they have registration in March, they have registration in March of every year. So what we did is we put the onus on the community members. So we created a list. So if you drop down the month of September, in this list is all those organizations that communicated to us that they open registration in September. So what our community member does is just click on that sport organization, and they're encouraged to follow those sport organizations so they are in the know when they start announcing their registration and other things like that. A real bonus to this is also that people are going to start recognizing how much is available. So when you go and you're like, okay, I want to register my child for soccer, and you start going through the months, what months do they open up our soccer programming in the region? They're going to see this plethora, a list of different sport organizations and different sporting opportunities. So that helps us increase sport overall within the region. So just want to celebrate that. We're going to be putting marketing dollars towards that because we think that it's going to be an incredibly valuable tool for our region. And that, it's really hard in 5 minutes to create a picture without really tripping over myself, but I just want to thank you guys for continuing to value what sport and recreation does for the social and economic health of our region.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the work you do. Thank you for the presentation. And as a parent whose kids has missed sports because we just don't know what registration happens, thank you for that calendar. I'm excited for that. I'm just looking around, and I see Councillor Blackmore, Councillor Berg, and Councillor Bosch. Councillor Blackmore.
Thanks, Karna. It's good to see you again. My question kind of came up. You mentioned that we're lacking in coaches. And you briefly mentioned that part of that is that they're insecure about their education. So do you see a path forward where we can work with you and the community to increase coaching capacity in all sports?
Yeah, education, actually, we haven't done our strategic plan, but that's going to be one of the pillars that we're going to be leading on in the next year because of that reason. There are some really great ideas that have been thrown around. As you know, we did the Make a Diff after school program, and we trained 18 coaches through that grant. Not so great. We're not, as a sport connection, entering the programming realm. But what we can do is we can still partner with the sport organizations and find a grant, do education on sport training. And then what I would recommend from that piece is engaging with practicums. So the college, we've already discussed this about because Julia is the chair for the
kinesiology and health sciences.
Yes, at the college. So we're talking about partnering with that. But also, if we can educate the coaches, we want to offer practicum programming for mentorship because that's what we really recognized was missing in this after-school program. You can't just train a coach and launch them and think that they can deal with everything that a coach deals with, right? Without some sort of mentorship. And that was the real learning from that program. So if we can partner with our organizations and say, okay, we have 3 coaches for, GP minor hockey, they will mentor with them through a grant that we potentially will get. That's the intention. So that actually money will come outside of our community, but it will leverage the quality of programming within the community. So there are ideas, Councillor Blackmore, but we haven't shaken everything out, but we're very excited about the prospects.
Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Berg.
Thank you, Chair Bressie, and thank you, ladies. So I have 2 quick questions. One is around the facilities. You mentioned that 38% say they need more facilities. Now we're expecting a cultural and sport or recreation master plan here very soon, and immediately followed by budget deliberations. So we want to have that conversation, and I'm glad you're here. Is there anything specific that comes to mind from your organizations that you're lacking?
Specific as in facility specific? Yeah, and this comes actually through the Grande Prairie Regional Recreation Committee, and we've been recognizing the lack of gymnasium space and access to gymnasium space. We actually did a survey with the school principals actually right before COVID, so things have probably changed, but I think they're worse off. The lack of school programming and the lack of schools' ability to rent out space, right, actually compounds that effect. So we're taking a look at that, and that's been, since 2014, that's been a conversation that just keeps increasing as time goes by. Certainly, there's other. That includes also upgrades, as we know, and I know you guys understand that after life cycle of a building, there's going to be needed upgrades. Some of our spaces are like that, like the Legion and things like that. So I anticipate that's going to be part of the conversation. So there are lots of conversations happening with facilities right now, which is really wonderful for our sport organizations to know in the region that that's looked at regionally, because the one-on-one conversations from these contacts is like, I'm really worried they're going to put so much money into the wrong space, right? Whereas, for example, this would be a specific contact for our arenas in the rural areas. They're like, can we look at it as a region? And it's really great for me to be able to say, you know what? They actually are. There's a regional recreation committee, and they're discussing everything collectively so we can make the best decisions moving forward.
Great, thanks. And then I know coming up in just a handful of minutes, we're going to be talking around the curling club, and I know that we've had previous discussions about trying to convert that into a year-round facility. So,
which I applaud. I think that that would be a fabulous year-round facility, and I believe that you could fill it.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. Thank you for coming, Karna and Julia. I guess my question is just a simple one. Can you give us the numbers in your membership and the number of responses for this survey out of your membership?
I sure can. So our membership is probably 40, but that's paid membership. We service people the same level, whether they're paid or not. But we had 61 sport organizations in this. So our sport database reflects between 160 and 200 sport organizations in the region. Depends how you shake them out, right? Because it's not so easy because you're looking at Mighty Peace Football as a sport organization, but you collectively also look at the different clubs and things like that. So as far as a sample goes, we thought it was enough conversation that we had some valuable input to feedback.
So you were satisfied with the responses? And
yeah, and we can continue to get more responses, absolutely. And as we do have conversations, they actually get added to that line just so that we can collect that information. And we know, and we're laser sharp about our strategic plan for the following years.
good to hear. Thank you for your presentation.
Excellent. I see Councillor Plott, and then I'll come back to Berg.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Always love your passion for sports, Karen. It's always exciting. I'm just curious, when you're saying 79% of them could or would host a tournament, is of the facilities holding them back, or what's holding them back from not seeing more tournaments?
Multiple factors. It could be facilities. It could be the organization's confidence to be able to do it. It could be that, let's say, if we're talking about ringette, there's only 3 ringette teams, right? So you don't sometimes have the capacity to do that. But yeah, multiple things. But usually it'll be facilities and the people, the sport organization themselves.
Okay, and you'd mentioned about, Councillor Berg had mentioned or asked about this court sports facilities, and I'm just curious, within court sports, is there a sport group that specifically needs it more, like between volleyball, basketball, pickleball? Like, are they all in need, or is there one that's standing out that's really struggling to get court sport for their group?
It depends on what your perspective is. So, in my opinion, they're all at need. If a sport organizations come forward and they are at need, they truly see that need as a sport organization as them as being citizens and individuals. If we're looking at it from perspective of numbers, right? Like when we're making decisions about this, utilization is really what's important, and long-term trends, not that specific organization. I would never recommend building a facility because one sport organization says, hey, we're so mad, we want more space. What I would recommend is taking a look and saying, oh, well, maybe these guys have the same issues as these guys. Let's do some stakeholder engagement, figure that out, and then make long-term decisions. Are we growing in sport? Is our region growing in population? Those are the types of things that I would recommend looking at specifically.
And just one more, if I can.
Yeah, just keep it brief if you can.
Do you have any examples of other communities that have worked with industry to build court sport facilities? And what I'm meaning is, I know my kids have been in several industrial park buildings in Edmonton and Calgary for soccer, basketball, volleyball, those kind of things. I'm just wondering if you've seen any fits or have had any people want to come forward that would like to work with the city on repurposing some industrial buildings.
So, sorry, to clarify, has any companies come up here to say, yeah, this is what we do? And we would like to look, not to my knowledge, there are a lot of companies out there that do have the expertise, and if there was a bid out, I'm sure they would come forward with a bid, but they haven't knocked on the Sport Connections door.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Clayton.
Thanks, Chair Bressie. Thanks for coming today, ladies. 2 quick questions. I think your saturation's pretty high of getting data from all sports. How many organizations do you think are still out there that aren't aware of you or that you're not collecting data from?
Well, within any given organization, you will be able to find a sport volunteer that says, I do not know the Sport Connection. Let's be clear. When we have a sport database, it's 1 or 2, maybe 3 sport contacts within that organization of up to 1,500. So yeah, there's a lot of people that don't, but I would say, like, if you are connecting, if you tested me on names of those sport organizations who are the contacts, they would say, oh yes, I've dealt with the Sport Connection and with Karna before. So I do feel like we're not dealing with any less than 60 to 80 different sport organizations every year. And that could be, sitting down, helping them out with the budget for an event, or sitting down, helping them with actual registering their organizations as a nonprofit, right? Or it could just be a helping hand and getting them a form to get in front of council. It's a different thing for every single organization and every single individual. So I think that the perspective is how many people and their organizations. I would say most of them do know about the Sport Connection, if they are our contact, yeah.
Perfect. And then the next question, are you aware of any models? You mentioned that board membership and lack of board members is a concern for organizations. Are you aware of any models where associations are sharing boards? And so I think of sort of a high-level board where two sports have the same board, but really this is a governance type board. They take that stress off the volunteers to be the board for organizations. Are you aware of any sort of models or organizations that are sharing boards?
Yeah, there are they're like provincial sport organization models for multi-sport, just like that. Multi-sport is actually a big trend and keyword when you're talking about national policies, provincial policies. We want to increase that as much as possible. Have I seen it in the Grande Prairie region? Not at this time.
Okay, thanks.
I do see Councillors Berg and Bosch getting in. I will recognize you, but also just remind you we do have a very full morning, so if we could just keep things brief and on track, I'd appreciate that. But Councillor Berg.
Yeah, thank you. So you'd mentioned promotions. Is that something that the city can help with? I guess there's two types of promotions. There's event marketing, so you've got a specific event and you add market for the month ahead, or is this something just in general for general awareness?
Both. General awareness is actually needed right now, and it's actually a conversation we're currently having with the Grande Prairie Regional Recreation Committee. Within that master plan, there's a recommendation that the region lifts sport collectively by using the same language and promoting sport and recreation. So I'm happy to say yes, there is a place for the municipalities to invest in that type of thing. Also, you do things like this registration list is exposure, right? We do try-it days, that's exposure. So there are different ways you can do through events, but also we do put marketing dollars towards it and try to increase our following online so that they can feed through our organization as well. But yes, we all have a role to play in that. They don't have the time. Remember, these people are doing what they're doing off the sides of their desks.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Councillor Bosch.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. Since you're the boots on the ground for really a lot of the sport organizations, and you primarily look after the organized sport, what is your feeling on the trends of non-organized sports right now?
I am very supportive of physical activity and movement. Collectively, that becomes a feeder system into sport and rec. Remember, sport is just a tool, right, that we can use, positive or negative. It's just a tool so we can get physical activity and active and engaged citizens, right? So it is a piece of the picture, and I support it fully. And I think that there's a lot of collaboration and partnership opportunities for those types of things as well.
Are you seeing an increase in that since COVID?
Yeah, so like spontaneous play are you referring to, or something particular like a cornhole tournament or things like that? Or
yeah, just independent sport and then just play outside of organized sport.
You know what? We collectively need to have like strategic plans to increase play, like neighborhood association tournaments, pure recreational play out in the back field, right? Versus the travel play. Have I seen it? I've seen it. There's a huge movement nationally and provincially for that type because people are falling out of sport. Mostly because they're priced out of sport, right? So we have a huge population to recognize that they're on the outside. How do we get them engaged and into the inside and get them participating?
Right, and that's where I see a role for the city to help you out.
100%, yes, thank you. That's great.
Great, excellent. Well, thank you again for the work you do, and thank you for coming to chat with us today. We appreciate the information.
Thank you, everyone.
And I will turn it over to Mr. Lemieux for his service area update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm going to start with Community Social Development and like to advise committee that the recruitment for the Youth Advisory Council term, that recruitment closed on October the 15th. We had 10 applications received, and so those applicants will be invited to a meet and greet with the community social development staff to discuss their role and hear about the issues. On the enforcement services side, enforcement services has completed the taxi inspections for the fall. Approximately 120 taxis were inspected, which represents an increase of 45 additional taxis on the road since our last inspection cycle, which was in April 2022. That's good news. City Communication and Enforcement Services have partnered together to have a strategic media release around Halloween activities. So there will be patrols from both Enforcement Services and the RCMP during Halloween. However, information and education are considered the best options to keep our young citizens safe. So that's happening. As a result of some growing concerns of inappropriate behavior at some of the football games, Enforcement Services has been working with Apex Security and has been sending the Public Security Unit and Enforcement Services to conduct patrols during the patrol at the CKC during those times. So there is communication and meetings happening between Enforcement Services, CKC, and the schools and the league to address these concerns moving forward and certainly putting a better strategy in place for the future. From the fire department, our new engine is now in full service and has responded to several calls already. And the department responded to a call of an activated carbon monoxide detection some time ago. It was on a Friday, maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. Upon arrival of the responding crew, they quickly determined that there was a carbon monoxide issue in the building. It was quite serious, so they immediately evacuated the 2 businesses that were housed in the building. EMS was called in, and it was deemed necessary to transport 18 people to hospital to be treated for carbon monoxide exposure. So the investigation identified the source of the carbon monoxide, and we were able to remedy the situation and put out a media release reminding people of the importance of fire detection, but also carbon monoxide detectors in facilities. So that detector certainly served its purpose there. From the police end, on the RCMP side, I just want to highlight 2 or 3 items. The RCMP have recovered stolen property, seized weapons and drugs, and laid charges following an investigation into a break and enter on or about September 22nd. 5 people were charged with multiple offenses on that one. And then on October the 3rd, the RCMP recovered stolen property and seized weapons and laid charges again following an investigation into a suspicious vehicle in the area of 109th Street, 107th Avenue. So 2 people charged there with multiple offenses again. And on October the 14th, officers alongside the crime reduction unit located a suspicious vehicle in a Copperwood neighborhood, and a traffic stop was attempted. The vehicle fled from the officers, but the vehicle was later located in the area of 102nd Street, 128th Avenue, and 1 person charged with multiple offenses on that one. On the community knowledge campus side, the membership and growth coordinator has been busy working on several membership incentive programs for the 4th quarter of the year, with 2 exciting months of activities, programs, and incentives targeted at physical wellness and quality of life. And the fall fitness pass has been launched and will be available for purchase until November 30th. Over 370 passes have already been sold since the launch date. And our sports sampler days, launched on October 17th, have been very well received with a very busy online pre-registrations. And from the Sports Development, Wellness, and Culture, the Grande Prairie Museum hosted the annual Folktale Tours on October 14th and 15th with 151 attendees, so that's a really good number. That's a partnership with the South Peace Regional Archives, and it works to tell historically accurate spooky stories through the Heritage Village at night. So that was very well received. From the Sports Development, Wellness, and Culture, again, the Pinty's Grand Slam of Curling, the Hearing Life Challenge, has just been completed. It was a very successful event with over 5,100 volunteer hours utilized in addition to the staff, city staff that also participated in that particular event. So a very successful event that we'll get a further report coming to committee in the next little while from the Grande Prairie Curling Center and city staff on the details of that particular event. And lastly, on transit, so work is ongoing to adjust both the fixed route and on-demand transit schedules. Adjustments are expected to be implemented by the end of November, and a report will be coming to committee outlining some of the changes. And I'm happy to report I attended a transit staff meeting with all of our drivers recently, and we shared some of the proposed changes, and it was very well received. The drivers certainly hearing some feedback from their clients, and are very happy with what the proposed changes are that are coming in November. That is my report, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Blackmore.
I just have one quick question. I was asked this just yesterday. Last year, right before Christmas, the Eastlink Centre held a Christmas gift certificate sale with the plastic balls, ornaments, and the person is wondering if they're going to do that again, and if so, when, because they want to be first in line.
I believe that's in the plans, and I will get council some details on that.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions? Great. Thank you. Moving on. I hope I'm saying this right, but de-accessioning, yes, items from the museum. Mr. Taz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm here again. Some of you may remember I was here earlier about de-accessioning with the museum's collection. The museum's collection is quite dynamic. We do try to take the best care of every item we have, but sometimes we get items that we no longer need or want. For today, though, I just have one item that came to light. With the closure of the Heritage Discovery Center on September the 18th, I was approached by Orville Sorkin, and he had donated a gas pump, an antique gas pump that was in the United Farmers Association section of the Heritage Discovery Center. He had asked for his pump back, and I had told him it had been donated, and he said that was not his intent. He said his intent was to loan it for the life of the exhibit, and he had expected it to be returned when the exhibit's end of life came, which it has. I did review we do have the donation form. I do have a letter from Mr. Sorkin asking for the pump back. We've reviewed our collection. We do have two other gas pumps in the collection. One of them is very similar and in a equally well state of preservation. And we'd recommend that we give this pump back to Orville Sorkin because it's a duplicate in the collection. Any questions?
Great, thank you. I see Mayor Clayton, then Councillor Berg. Sure, Councillor Berg.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I just want to speak in favor of this. If we've already got one, we don't certainly need two and one in storage. And Mr. Sorkin has built himself a nice museum in just north of Grande Prairie, and I think it might be a nice addition to that. And considering it used to be his, I'm going to vote in favor of this.
Great. So you're willing to make that motion, Mayor Clayton?
Yeah, you bet. I would move the committee recommend council approve the accession of one artifact from the Grande Prairie Museum's collection as listed. Just quickly speaking to it, if you haven't been to Sorkinville, I highly recommend it. It's truly a unique facility. It's just adjacent to the Teepee Creek Rodeo grounds, and it's just really cool out there. So thank you for working with Mr. Sorkin to get this piece back to him, but I encourage committee to support this. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Clayton. I just learned about something new in our region I wasn't aware of. Any question or debate? Great, I'll call to question. And that motion carries. Thank you for the report.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, one question, Ms. Bosch.
Thank you, Chair Bressie. Since you're here, I have to ask you this. So the memory lane images in the core, how are we looking at getting those replaced? And repaired.
To the chair, we just had a meeting with the Peace Country Historical Society, and one of the agenda items was for me to give you a call, Councillor Bosch. We've had recent developments with the Memory Lane plaque tours. So we did have plans this year within the Historical Society to get those damaged ones replaced. That didn't happen for various reasons. But recently, the co-op department store or grocery store has remodeled their interior, and they have 4 of the Memory Lane plaques within the interior that they're no longer interested in having within the interior. So I was going to call you to meet with you to talk about the future of maybe where we can place these plaques or future promotion for this Memory Lane tour, because it's time to start promoting it again. So you will be getting an email from me later this week.
Perfect. I think we'll come up with something fun. Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next up, we've got a report on an eagerly awaited report on the Grande Prairie Curling Center by Ms. Cajolet.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Bressie. The Grande Prairie Curling Center presented as a delegation in May of this year to share its long-term strategic plan and request some additional resources. At the June Council Committee of the Whole meeting, Council approved community group funding for 2023 in the amount of $138,859 for the Curling Center. In July, Council approved a mid-year capital request for administration to seek professional services to evaluate the feasibility of converting the center to a year-round facility. So there was only a single bid in response to the request for proposals. However, the price exceeded the funding available and approved for the project. Currently, the Curling Center is seeking additional resources to support wages and operating expenses and equipment to ensure the sustainability of programs and services. Administration is collaborating with the center to develop an operating agreement that will include some performance measures, outcome measures, as well as benchmark data. Administration recommends that Council refer the Grande Prairie Curling Center's request for additional operating funding in the amount of $117,279, as well as the capital funding request of $28,500 for the feasibility study to 2023 budget deliberations.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, if there's no discussion, I'd like to make the motion.
I do have a question before we get some business on the floor.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand the request. So we've previously allocated $20,000, so this would be an additional $28,000 for a total of $48,000, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, awesome. I don't see anybody else with their hands up, so Councillor O'Connor, if you're willing to make the motions.
Yes, so would you like them together or as separate?
I think they're both just referring to budget deliberations, so unless somebody asks to split them out, I'm fine with them being together.
Okay, then I would like to recommend refer the Grande Prairie Curling Center's request for additional operating funding in the amount of $117,279 to the 2023 budget deliberations, and number 2, refer the Grande Prairie Curling Center's feasibility study capital project in the amount of $28,500 to the 2023 budget deliberations.
Excellent, thank you. Any comments or discussion on the motion? Councillor Berg.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to speak in favor of this. I attended the Pinty's Grand Slam of Curling on the weekend. Outstanding event. Was watching highlights on TV each evening. Really represented our city well in a positive light. And I think a healthy curling club is something that the people in Grande Prairie want to see.
Excellent, thank you. Any other comments or debate? Not seen any, so I'll call the motion to question. And that motion carries. Thank you for the report. The next thing we've got an item that has to be in camera because of economic interest of a third party. And I do believe that there will likely be a motion coming out of this, but we do need to go into camera for the report. So, Mayor Clayton, I see your hand up.
So moved.
Awesome. So we have a motion to go in camera. Is there any comment or debate on that? Not seeing any. Let's call that to question. Awesome. And committee will move in camera.
Are we keeping you up?
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. Are we good to go from video streaming? Awesome. We'll resume again in 3, 2, 1. And thank you. Welcome back. We do have a recommended motion. I'm wondering if anybody from committee is willing to make it. Councillor O'Connor.
I'd like to move that committee recommend council approve the city-county project with funding in the amount of $48,921.05 from Council Strategic Initiatives Fund.
Great, thank you. And just a little point of order, I think it's 981. If that's all right with you, Councillor O'Connor.
That would be more accurate.
Excellent, thank you. Is there any conversation or debate on this motion? In that case, I will call its question. And that motion carries. And with that, we will move on to our outstanding items list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just a couple comments on the list is because of the realignment of the committees, we're going to be going through this list just to make sure that everything belongs to this committee. I know we've had to move some items around, but other than that, I think the dates are still accurate moving forward.
Excellent, thank you. Definitely a lot of work this committee inherited. Is somebody willing to move that we accept the oil as presented? Councillor Berg, any conversation or debate? I'll call that to question. Oh, that's fine.
Mayor Clayton in favor.
Verbal. All right. Councillor Bressie.
Councilor O'Connor in favor.
Councillor Berg in favor.
Great. That motion. Oh, sorry. I see. Before I adjourn, I see Councillor Blackmore with her hand up.
I just see one item on the list that does not have a date associated with when we expect to report, and that would be the second item. Stuck out for me because I'm not used to seeing something without a date.
Yes, and I apologize. I was provided a date by Angela, and I forget off the top of my head what it is, but I will make sure it's on, that we have a date next time. Yes, and I was provided a date for that one also, and I apologize.
Great. Excellent. Anybody want to change their vote? In that case, I'll call that motion carried unanimously, and with that, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.